Sawadee-ka. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying the words of the Buddha in Volume 9 of our book series. Volume 9 is titled The Six Sense Bases. We're going to be studying chapters 41 through 47 today to finish up this book, and then next week we're going to be starting Volume 10, which is titled The Buddha's Way. So if you would like to join us for this particular program, all you need to do is come into Zoom or Facebook, YouTube. What we're going to be doing is studying the original words of the Buddha. I invite students from Zoom to be able to volunteer to read one of the chapters. After someone reads a chapter, I will share some teachings on that. Then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to the chapter. If you'd like to ask questions, all you need to do is put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. I'll be able to see that. Or if you're in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like. And if you're in Zoom and you'd like to volunteer to read, you can also raise your hand electronically, unmute your microphone, and then you'll be able to actually read. If you'd like to read these books ahead of time, because oftentimes students are doing that, you can read by downloading them from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions on Amazon, or if you're here in Chiang Mai, we have printed copies at the temple where you can just reimburse us for the printing cost. So it looks like Pat has volunteered to read this first chapter, which is chapter 41. If you'd like to go ahead, Pat.
Thank you. One who is engaged is unliberated. One who is disengaged is liberated. Monks, one who is engaged is unliberated. One who is disengaged is liberated. Consciousness, monks, while standing, might stand engaged with form. Based upon form, established upon form, with a sprinkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Or consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with feeling. Based upon feeling, established upon feeling, with a sprinkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Or consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with perception. Based upon perception, established upon perception, with a sprinkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Or consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with volitional formations. Based upon volitional formations, established upon volitional formations, with a sprinkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Monks, though someone might say, separated from form, separated from feeling, separated from perception, separated from volitional formations, I will make known the coming and going of consciousness. Its passing away and rebirth, its growth, increase, and expansion is impossible. Monks, if a monk has abandoned desire for the form aggregate, with the abandoning of craving, the basis is cut off. There is no support for the establishing of consciousness. If he has abandoned desire for the feeling aggregate, for the perception aggregate, for the volitional formations aggregate, for the consciousness aggregate, with the abandoning of craving, the basis is cut off. There is no support for the establishing of consciousness. When that consciousness is unestablished, not coming to growth, non-generative, the mind is liberated. By being liberated, the mind is steady. By being steady, the mind is content. By being content, one is not agitated. Being unagitated, one personally attains nibbana. One understands, destroyed is birth, the holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of existence. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pat. So here, you guys have been studying these things, and now the Buddha is just kind of adjusting the wording a little bit. Where he's using the word engaged, you can think about that as clinging, or you can think about it as craving or desire or attachment. Where he's using the word disengaged, you can think about that as non-clinging or non-craving, non-desire. So here what he's saying is someone who has clinging, or if they're having craving and attachment, the mind is unliberated. So one who is engaged is unliberated. But when one has no clinging or no craving, then the mind is actually liberated. Remember, we're using that word liberated because the mind's free of its pollutions. It's free of the strong feelings. So the Buddha goes on to talk here about the five aggregates. He starts with the form aggregate, then he talks about feeling, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. And what he's saying is that if you cling to these aggregates, these 5 aggregates that make a human being, which are the 5 criteria, then your mind is not liberated. But when you are not any longer clinging to this or engaged with it, longing, yearning for it, then the mind is actually liberated. So he's going through all these different aggregates here. And then eventually he comes to say that though someone might say separated from form, separated from feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness, that they are going to make known the coming and going of consciousness, meaning they're going to explain the cycle of rebirth because they've separated themselves from these 5 aggregates. And the Buddha is saying this is impossible for them because they're not going to essentially know what leads to the continuous rebirth. Here he's saying if a monk has abandoned, right, completely eliminated the desire, the craving for the form aggregate, the feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, consciousness, then the individual understands that since they've abandoned the craving for these aggregates, there's no more support for the establishing of consciousness, meaning that consciousness can continue. So it's not just separating yourself from these things, like distancing yourself from the 5 aggregates. It's eliminating the craving to cling to it and hold on to it. And then that's when an individual can understand that the consciousness will not be able to continue to come back over and over and over again. And they will understand that their mind is liberated. So when you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, clinging to these 5 aggregates, your mind will actually experience the liberation. Of course, you need to eliminate the 10 fetters and all those other things. And being liberated, the mind is free. That's why the Buddha now says, okay, being liberated, the mind is steady, right? There's nothing that can shake up the enlightened mind. It's unshakable. It's steady. It's calm. It's stable. And then with the mind being steady, it's content. With it being content, it's not agitated. Being unagitated, the mind has actually attained enlightenment. And an individual will know that. They will understand, not only is their mind enlightened, but they will understand through dependent origination that they are no longer going to come back and be reborn over and over and over and over again. That they've lived this holy life. They've purified their mind. They've done what had to be done. They've done the training. They've learned the wisdom. They've executed it. They've done what had to be done. And now there's no more for this state of existence. So the Buddha describes that if you've gotten to enlightenment, that there's no longer existence in the cycle of rebirth. But that's very different than saying there's no existence anywhere. There's no, this being is completely gone. Because sometimes people say that what the Buddha taught is that once you attain enlightenment and die, that there's, basically you're snuffed out and there's nothing after that. But the Buddha didn't say that. The Buddha didn't say what does come next or what doesn't come next. He just left it as an undeclared teaching. But he does say that there's no longer existence in the cycle of rebirth. And that's very different than saying that this being doesn't exist anywhere at any time, right? So it's important to make that distinction, that if the mind is unenlightened, there is going to be existence in the cycle of rebirth after death. But then if an individual is actually enlightened, there's no more existence in the cycle of rebirth, but what may or may not come next is an undeclared teaching. So the Buddha here is teaching you not to cling to those 5 aggregates and not just to separate yourself from them, but completely eliminate any craving, desire, longing, or yearning for these particular aggregates, because you have all 5 of them: physical form, feelings, perceptions, which are views and opinions about the world, the volitional formations, which are choices and decisions, and then the consciousness, which is the mind itself. And if you need any examples of these, or if you need to understand these further, let me know. But I have taught these at different times in this program, but depending on when someone's joined this program, they may need a refresher on that, or just to know what those actually are. So let me know what questions you guys have on this particular chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Okay, it looks like Vibhav has a question. Is there a reason words are changed? Yeah, because when you teach and you're teaching for many, many years, you're teaching people many, many, many times, you're saying the same things over and over and over again. And it's kind of nice to change the words occasionally so people can hear it from a different perspective using different words. Engaged is like, oh, I'm so engaged, right? And this is interesting because they actually have things in the world today. They call it engaged Buddhism. But they don't understand this particular discourse, of course, because engaged Buddhism is like you go out into the community and you engage in the community. You try to change what's going on in the world around you. And that's opposite of what the Buddha actually taught. And you can see it here. But he uses different words sometimes, and we'll just kind of mix it up so that he's not using the same exact words all the time, because the same people are listening to these discourses and understanding from a different perspective in different words. He can kind of bring kind of a renewed understanding and a renewed meaning to what these things mean. Okay, let me see if there's any other questions here. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So let's go to the next chapter, which is chapter 42. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Keely, go ahead, ma'am. And it looks like Samantha's next after that.
Without excitement, the three underlying tendencies are abandoned. Monks, dependent on the I and forms, I consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling, felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Dependent on the ear and sounds, ear consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Dependent on the nose and odors, nose consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Dependent on the tongue and flavors, tongue consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling felt as pleasant nor painful, or neither painful or pleasant. Dependent on the body and physical objects, body consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Dependent on the mind and mental objects, mind consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as condition, there arises a feeling felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. When one is touched by a pleasant feeling, if one does not excite in it, welcome it, and remain holding to it, then the underlying tendency to crave does not lie within one. When one is touched by a painful feeling, if one does not sorrow, grieve, and have displeasure, does not weep, beating one's breast and become distraught, then the underlying tendency to aversion does not lie within one. When one is touched by a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, if one understands as it actually is the cause, the appearance, the gratification, the danger, and the escape in regard to that feeling, then the underlying tendency to ignorance, a knowing of true reality, does not lie within one. Monks, that one shall here and now make an end of discontentedness by abandoning the underlying tendency to crave for pleasant feelings, by abolishing the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feelings, by destroying the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feelings, by abandoning ignorance and arousing true wisdom that is possible. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keely. So here, the Buddha is sharing a few things. First, he's talking about what constitutes contact, Because in order for there to be discontentedness in the mind, yes, there needs to be a craving, desire, attachment in the mind, but there needs to be contact. And this is coming through the 6 sense bases. So the I is the internal sense base, the form is the external sense base. When the mind becomes aware of the I in the form, this is the I consciousness, that the mind becomes aware of what the I is seeing. And now the 3 of these is called contact, that there's now been contact. And if the mind sees this as agreeable, that's where the pleasant feelings will come in. If the mind sees it as disagreeable, that's where the painful feelings or the neither painful nor pleasant feelings come in. This is the whole underlying problem in the unenlightened mind with the sensual desire. And this is happening through all the 6 sense bases, whether it's the eye, ear, nose, tongue, the body, or the mind itself. The mind with its sensual desire is going to see this contact as either agreeable or disagreeable. And that's where the conditioned feelings are arising. So now what the Buddha is saying is when one is touched by a pleasant feeling, meaning that you've had some contact through the sense bases, and now it's triggered one of your cravings, and there's these pleasant feelings that are arising, these conditioned pleasant feelings. If one does not excite in it and welcome it and remain holding on to it, then the underlying tendency to crave does not lie within one. Okay, so you're going to get to a point where you have cravings, desires, attachments in your mind, and you're working on shedding those. And they're going to start triggering these pleasant feelings. But your mind knows that this is unwise, and you choose to cut that off. You cut off at the bodily sensations. So you're choosing not to continue to remain holding on to this pleasant feeling. You're not exciting in it. You're not welcoming it. And by shedding this, where you're training your mind to not form conditioned feelings based on some condition, the underlying tendency to crave doesn't exist in the mind. There is still craving, desire, attachment there because the mind is not yet enlightened, but the mind is making its way towards abandoning craving, desire, attachment. The mind is distancing itself from craving, desire, attachment because it understands the danger in these pleasant feelings. And then when you're touched by a painful feeling, meaning you're experiencing a painful feeling in the mind, if you don't sorrow, grief, and have displeasure, I really like this next analogy, weep, beating one's breast, like, oh no, why me? Please, no, why me? Becoming distraught, right? Then the underlying tendency to aversion doesn't lie within one. Aversion is where you're pushing away either a person or a situation. So when you're experiencing those painful feelings, if you know that there's those painful feelings and you're working to cut that off because one of your cravings have been triggered and you don't sorrow and grief and have displeasure, but you're actively working to cut that off, you're not becoming distraught, then you're not pushing away, right? You're not having this tendency to push away. Then when you're touched with a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, when that's starting to arise in the mind understands as it actually is. Okay, the cause of this is the mind's craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, that you understand the disappearance, that this object that the mind is craving and longing, yearning for, it's going to disappear. It's impermanent. So if you allow your mind to cling or crave this particular item and you base your inner feelings on it, well, it's going to disappear at some point. It's going to be impermanent. Then the gratification is where the mind is constantly wanting things to be permanently comfortable and chasing pleasant feelings. That's the sensual desire where the mind wants things to be gratifying all the time. And the mind needs to understand the danger in that if you allow the mind to get conditioned pleasant feelings, that when that condition doesn't exist because it's impermanent, it's going to end up in the painful feelings. So you need to be able to see the danger in allowing the mind to keep chasing after gratification. Then you're going to need to understand the escape. The escape is the Eightfold Path. That's what's going to help you to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment and escape this constant cycle of being in painful feelings, craving something to get to pleasant feelings, having pleasant feelings, that condition changes. Now you end back up in the painful feelings. So you need to understand this escape of the Eightfold Path and eliminating craving, desire, attachment. So that's the escape in regards to these conditioned feelings. And when you understand the cause, the disappearance, the gratification, the danger, and the escape, these 5 things, then the underlying tendency to ignorance doesn't lie within the mind, because the mind has wisdom, that it understands each one of these things. And not just in the summary form that I'm explaining it in, but you need to know in detail what craving, desire, attachment is, and how the mind's longing, yearning, because that's the cause. The disappearance is the universal truth of impermanence. The gratification is the central desire. You need to know that in detail, what that is, the danger in that, and allowing the mind to continue to crave gratification and have longing, yearning, and the escape. You need to know the Eightfold Path in detail. And that's where the mind has cultivated wisdom, and now this ignorance doesn't exist in the mind. And with these things being true, where the underlying tendency to crave or have aversion and push things away, or ignorance, that means the mind has arisen wisdom. Now an individual can make an end to discontentedness. That's the ultimate goal, because the individual is abandoning this craving for pleasant feelings, understanding how that's so unwise, abolishing this tendency to aversion to painful feelings, because you're going to experience some painful feelings between now and when you get to enlightenment. There's going to be some painful feelings, and you need to understand that that's your unwholesome karma, that because you craved and you got pleasant feelings out of this particular thing, when you're eliminating that craving and your mind's not getting what it wants, there's going to be painful feelings. This is where I talk about walking through the fire to appreciate the fresh air on the other side. Or I talk about getting out of the mafia, that when you got in the mafia, you had all these friends, you had all these new business opportunities to make money and all these kinds of things. You got all these pleasant things. But now when you're leaving, it's really painful to walk out the door. And it's the same thing as that when you first got these cravings with your car, your life partner, your children, your house, and all these other things, you get all these pleasant feelings. But when you're training your mind to let go of its craving, there's going to be painful feelings. And if you're pushing those away, meaning that you're not willing to go through that and walk through that, then you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment. So you need to abolish this aversion, where you understand that sometimes you're going to need to put your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, and you're going to need to trigger those cravings. So now you can cut off and cut off and cut off and walk through those painful feelings to get out on the other side. And then you need to be able to destroy this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality through arising wisdom. And that's what the Buddha is saying here. Abandoning ignorance by arousing true wisdom. That's why you don't believe in the teachings. You're learning to examine and investigate. You're reflecting to independently verify, and you're practicing to integrate them in to your day-to-day life. And now what he's saying is this end of discontentedness, if an individual's abandoning craving, abolishing aversion, destroying ignorance, then it is possible for them to now end their discontentedness. And this is something that you learn with the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires, that I teach this in all the beginning programs. So this is the words of the Buddha on that exact same thing. And he's also tying in here the 6 sense bases, helping you understand that that's what's going to trigger these cravings, because you're going to experience this contact coming through the 6 sense bases. And as you're noticing pleasant feelings or painful feelings, you need to cut that off and let it go, understanding the danger that if the mind continues to do this, you're going to just keep experiencing discontentedness over and over. So let me know what questions you guys have here. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom if you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So Samantha was interested in reading this next chapter, which is chapter 43. And if you'd like to go ahead, ma'am, you're more than welcome.
Thank you. Freed from discontentedness. Monks, one who does not seek excitement in form does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in feeling does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in perception does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in volitional formations does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in consciousness does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in discontentedness, I say, is freed from discontentedness. There are discourses spoken in the case of one who seeks excitement, in contrast of one who does not seek excitement. Monks, one who does not seek excitement in the eye does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in the ear does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in the nose does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in the tongue does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in the body does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in the mind does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in discontentedness, I say, is freed from discontentedness. There are discourses spoken in the case of one who seeks excitement, in contrast of one who does not seek excitement. One who does not seek excitement in forms does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in sounds does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in odors does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in flavors does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in physical objects does not seek excitement in discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement in mental objects does not seek excitement and discontentedness. One who does not seek excitement and discontentedness, I say, is freed from discontentedness.
All right. Thank you, Samantha. So these are all the things that the mind can crave and cling to. The 5 aggregates, which is form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, consciousness. These are the 5 aggregates, and the mind can crave and long and yearn, clinging to these things. And what the Buddha is saying is, if you don't seek excitement in them, meaning that if there's some physical form that your mind is seeking to be excited about, but if you don't seek excitement in that, then you're not interested in discontentedness. You're just not interested in any kind of conditional feelings. So there's the 5 aggregates that you could potentially cling to, and that could arise pleasant feelings. Remember, conditioned pleasant feelings. And if you allow the mind to get the conditioned pleasant feelings, the painful ones are waiting right around the corner for you, because whatever you grabbed onto in order to get those pleasant feelings, when that changes because of impermanence, your mind's going to end up in the painful feelings. Then there's these 6 sense bases, both internal and external, that the mind can cling to this. The eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, or the mind. The mind can long and yearn for the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And then the same thing for the external sense bases, that there's physical forms, sounds, odors, flavors, physical objects, mental objects. So what you would like to do is eliminate any kind of clinging or longing, yearning for excitement in any of these things, understanding that all of this stuff that you're coming in contact with, it's all impermanent. And if you choose to cling to any of this stuff and get excited about it, well, when you don't have that thing anymore, the mind's going to end up in the painful feelings. So let me know what questions you guys have here. Looks like Samantha has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. This is a bit of a general question. I have noticed over the past several months that I have not reacted or had the craving in certain situations that I would have in the past. Just something that I've noticed and was surprised by. I know it's some progress on the path. I wondered if there was any benefit to writing these thoughts or revelations down to show progress, or if it's just something that I should note in the moment and say, oh, well, that's interesting. I see that, I would have reacted differently in the past, but now I'm not. Or if it's something that would help me to, see what areas I've progressed in and what areas I haven't.
This is a personal decision for you. One of the things that I noticed is, as I was, training my mind, that there were certain things that the mind was holding on to and I just couldn't let go of it. I kept thinking about it over and over, and by writing it down, it helped get it out of my mind. So that's how I've used writing, but I didn't use it in terms of monitoring progress because, sometimes the mind can get conceited with that stuff, but you need to look at it yourself because there might be some other benefits to writing these things down. But at certain points in time, I would have certain thoughts or ruminating ideas and just things that I didn't know what to do with. And the best thing that I found is just to write them down, and that kind of empties them out of the mind. But whether you plot your progress and kind of like journal what it is that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis, this is going to come down to a personal decision for each individual. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions, so let's go to the next chapter. This is chapter 44. And it looks like Pat's going to read this one. Pat, I'm going to pause you halfway, but if you'd like to read the first part, and then I'll pause you, and then we pick it up again.
Transcending physical pain by avoiding mental pain. Monks, the uninstructed worldling feels a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. The instructed noble disciple too feels a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Therein, monks, what is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the instructed noble disciple and the uninstructed worldling? Venerable Sir, our teachings are rooted in the perfectly enlightened one, guided by the perfectly enlightened one, taking refuge in the perfectly enlightened one. It would be good if the perfectly enlightened one would clear up the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from him, the monks will remember it. Then listen and attend closely, monks, I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, the monks replied. The perfectly enlightened one said this. Monks, when the uninstructed worldling is being contacted by a painful feeling, he sorrows, grieves, and has displeasure. He weeps, beating his breast, and becomes distraught. He feels two feelings, a bodily one and a mental one. Suppose they were to strike a man with a dart, and then they would strike him immediately afterwards with a second dart, so that the man would feel feeling caused by two darts. So too, when the uninstructed worldling is being contacted by a painful feeling, he feels two feelings, a bodily one and a mental one. Being contacted by that same painful feeling, he has aversion towards it. When he has aversion towards painful feelings, the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feelings lies behind this. Being contacted by a painful feeling, he feels excitement and sensual pleasure. For what reason? Because the uninstructed worldling does not know of any escape from painful feelings other than sensual pleasure. When he seeks excitement in sensual pleasure, the underlying tendency to crave for pleasant feeling lies behind this. He does not understand as it really is the cause and the disappearance, the gratification, the danger, and the escape in the case of these feelings. When he does not understand these things, the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feelings lies behind this. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it attached. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it attached. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it attached. This, monks, is called an uninstructed worldling who is attached to birth, aging, and death, who is attached to sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair, who is attached to discontentedness, I say.
Okay,
monks.
I'm gonna pause you right there,
Stop there.
Pat. So here, this first thing that the Buddha is talking about is what's called an uninstructed worldling. We might refer to this person as a non-practitioner, someone who is not practicing the teachings. They're not learning, they're not practicing, they're just out there with no understanding of the teachings of the Buddha whatsoever. The Buddha is referring to this person as an uninstructed worldling because they're holding on to the world. And having not cultivated any wisdom about the natural laws, the Buddha is describing what this person experiences. That when they experience a painful feelings, they have sorrow, grief, pain, and displeasure. And he's talking about beating their breast and becoming distraught. And in this situation, when they're experiencing this, they've experienced two feelings, a bodily one and a mental one. And now he relates this to being struck with two darts, that you get hit with the first dart, which is the bodily pain, and then you get hit with the second dart, which is the mental pain. Okay? So now being contacted by that same painful feeling, now the individual has aversion to it. They're pushing it away. And the reason why is because they don't understand this painful feeling is impermanent. So now when they experience that painful feeling, they're pushing away this painful feeling. They're having this underlying tendency to aversion. And now when they've been experiencing this painful feeling, they now seek excitement and sensual pleasure because they want to get back to something that feels somewhat comfortable because they're experiencing these painful feelings, these miserable feelings. And now they head towards craving or sensual pleasure. And the Buddha is saying the reason why is because they don't know any other escape from these painful feelings other than sensual pleasure. So for example, if someone has a really hard day at work where they're having difficulties and struggles and they have certain painful feelings, they might come home and turn to alcohol or drugs or sex or gambling or shopping or food or something like this. The mind tends to crave when it's uninstructed, when it doesn't have wisdom of this whole process of what's going on. Then when it's experiencing the painful feelings, which are very uncomfortable for anybody to experience, but this uninstructed individual who doesn't have any wisdom whatsoever what the mind's doing, what they're going to do in order to get back to something that's somewhat comfortable is to crave something. And now the cycle just continues. So when this individual is now seeking excitement and sensual pleasures, they're craving for this permanent pleasure. They don't understand that these painful feelings that they're experiencing is actually coming from their cravings. That they had cravings before at some other time. They got pleasant feelings. Maybe they had a craving for their boss to talk to them in a certain way, or they had a craving for a new position or promotion at work. And now when they didn't get it, their craving wasn't fulfilled. So they ended up in the painful feelings. And now, because they're uninstructed, the only way that they know how to get something that is somewhat comfortable is to crave something else. Let's turn to food or drugs or alcohol or sex or shopping or gambling or something else. And this is what the mind's going to do because an individual who's uninstructed does not understand as it really is the cause. They don't understand why they're experiencing those painful feelings. And because they don't understand that cause, they also don't understand the disappearance, that, hey, this painful feeling is going to disappear. It is impermanent. Turning to a craving is just going to keep the cycle going, because when you crave this pleasantness, then the mind's just going to keep experiencing the problem over and over. And that's what the mind's doing, is it's wanting this gratification, this permanent gratification. And there's this danger, which if you allow the mind to keep doing that, it's going to stay stuck in this continuous cycle of it has a craving, it gets the pleasant feelings, then at some point impermanence happens, it's not getting the pleasant feelings anymore, it ends up in the painful feelings. Now when it's in the painful feelings, it craves something else, and now it chases that for a while, and then it gets those pleasant feelings, but then when that doesn't exist, it ends back up in the painful feelings. So the individual who's uninstructed keeps doing this over and over and over again because they don't understand the escape out of this. They don't understand how to escape from this because they're lacking wisdom. Because they have this unknowing of true reality, the mind keeps doing this over and over and over again. So when they experience a certain conditioned feeling, the uninstructed individual, they're going to experience all these feelings attached, meaning they're going to cling to these feelings. When they get those pleasant feelings, those conditioned pleasant feelings, they're going to cling to them and want them to be permanent. When they're experiencing the painful feelings, their mind's going to cling to that and think like, oh my goodness, this is permanent. Oh, I feel miserable. I feel horrible. I can never get over this. I can never get over my mother's death. I can never get over the fact that I was abused as a child. I can never get over the fact that he cheated on me or she cheated on me. I can never get over that. That is a trauma that I'm just going to always have. That's what the mind thinks in the unenlightened state, because those painful feelings are very impactful. And the mind thinks that, oh my goodness, this is just going to be lifelong. I can never get away from this. So the mind's going to be attached to all these conditioned feelings, including the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. And then the Buddha is describing this individual as being attached to birth, aging, and death, meaning that they're continuing to experience the cycle of rebirth over and over and over and over and over again because they're attached, they're holding on, they haven't cultivated the wisdom that they need to escape out of it. and they're attached to this sorrow and this grief and pain and displeasure and despair. They keep experiencing discontentedness over and over rather than realize that there's an escape for this. Okay, so this is the uninstructed worldling. Do you guys have any questions on this one before we move on in our chapter? Okay, I don't see any questions here. So now we're going to talk about what an instructed individual, someone who's cultivated wisdom about the path to enlightenment. So if you'd like to pick that up, Pat.
Sure. Monks, when the uninstructed noble disciple is contacted by a painful feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve, or have displeasure. He does not weep, beating his breast, and become distraught. He feels one feeling, a bodily one, not a mental one. Suppose they were to strike a man with a dart, but they would not strike him immediately afterwards with a second dart, so that the man would feel a feeling caused by one dart only. So too, when the instructed noble disciple is contacted by a painful feeling, he feels one feeling, a bodily one, not a mental one. Being contacted by that same painful feeling, he has no aversion towards it. Since he has no aversion towards painful feelings, the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feelings does not lie behind this. Being contacted by a painful feeling, he does not seek excitement and sensual pleasure. For what reason? Because the instructed noble disciple knows of an escape from painful feelings other than sensual pleasure. Since he does not seek excitement and sensual pleasure, the underlying tendency to crave for pleasant feelings does not lie behind this. He understands as it really is the cause and the disappearance, the gratification, the danger, and the escape in the case of these feelings. Since he understands these feelings, the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feelings does not lie behind this. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels neither a painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. This, monks, is called the noble disciple who is detached from birth, aging, and death, who is detached from sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair, who is detached from discontentedness, I say. This, monks, is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the instructed noble disciple and the uninstructed worldling. The wise one, learned, does not feel the pleasant and painful mental feeling. This is the great difference between the wise one and the worldling. For the learned one who has comprehended the teachings, who clearly sees this world and the next, desirable things do not provoke his mind. Towards the undesired, he has no aversion. For him, attraction and repulsion no longer exist. Both have been extinguished, brought to an end. Having known the dust-free, sorrowless state, the transcender of existence rightly understands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So here, now we're talking about the instructed noble disciple. This is an individual who studied the teachings closely. The way the Buddha is describing this person isn't enlightened yet, but they're, pretty well developed on the path. What he's saying is when this individual who understands the teachings, who has deep wisdom about the teachings, when they experience a painful feeling, because you will experience some painful feelings on your way to enlightenment, this individual does not sorrow, grief, or have displeasure or weep and beating their breast and becoming distraught, right? So this individual isn't like, oh my goodness, it's so miserable, it's so horrible. They know that the painful feeling's there, but as you guys have learned in the Eightfold Path, you're taking action to cut that off and let that go. You're applying right effort to cut that off and let it go. And what the Buddha is saying is you only experience a bodily feeling, not the mental one, that the mind can cut that off, right? Because there's only the bodily sensations that are associated with the arising of this painful feeling. And then the Buddha is describing this as being hit with just one dart, that you're not being hit with the mental dart. You're only getting hit with one dart. Because let's just say, for example, you stump your toe and you're an uninstructed worldling, you're a non-practitioner. If you stump your toe in the middle of the night in the dark, you're going to feel the physical pain. But then right away, your mind is going to crave permanent comfort. And now there's going to be mental anguish that goes along with it. Where what he's saying here is that an individual who's developed their mind, when they stump their toe, they're going to feel the physical pain, but their mind doesn't experience the mental anguish because their mind doesn't have that craving for permanent comfort. And that's what he's saying here, that having been contacted by a painful feeling, there's no aversion towards it, that you understand that that's part of the process, that since there's no aversion towards these painful feelings, that there's no aversion that's continuing, and being contacted by this painful feelings, that you don't seek excitement in sensual pleasures, because you understand that that's unwise. The whole reason why the mind is in the painful feelings is because of craving. So the last thing you're interested in doing when you're in painful feelings is to crave something. That's going to take you in the direction of continued discontentedness. So an individual who's wise does not seek excitement in sensual pleasures. They understand, okay, the mind is feeling this painful feeling. Let me cut that off. Let me cut that off. Let me cut that off. Let me redirect my mind. Don't allow the mind to crave something else, because that's just going to keep the whole problem going. And the reason why this is occurring is because the individual who's wise, who's an instructed noble disciple, they know the escape out of these painful feelings other than sensual pleasures. They understand the Eightfold Path. They understand practicing mindfulness, awareness of mind, applying right effort, cut off and let go at the bodily sensations. They're not going to allow their mind to keep going towards craving. And now, since the individual does not seek excitement in those sensual pleasures, the mind is no longer having this underlying tendency to crave, right? And the individual understands, like we were talking about, the cause, disappearance, gratification, and danger in the escape. And this is where the individual has arisen wisdom. And now, because there's wisdom there, the individual, when they experience these feelings, they're experiencing them unattached. That when the pleasant feeling arises, you're not attached to it. You cut it off, cut it off, cut it off, cut it off. Don't allow the mind experience that conditioned pleasant feeling. When a painful feeling is starting to arise, cut it off, cut it off, cut it off. Don't be attached to it. Or the neither painful nor pleasant feeling. You cut that off. That's using your right mindfulness to be aware of the bodily sensations arising, and then cut off and let go at the bodily sensations. And then this individual is also detached from birth, aging, and death, disinterested in coming back to this world, disinterested in the cycle of rebirth. You're unattached to it, like, hey, other people would like to do that, up to them. But for you, maybe you're like, out of here. I'm headed out of here, right? So your mind is no longer clinging to continued existence over and over and over again, and you're not attached or clinging to any of these painful feelings. So the Buddha is saying this is the difference between the instructed noble disciple and the uninstructed worldling. And he's referring to this instructed noble disciple as a wise one, a learned one that does not feel the pleasant and painful mental feeling, right? The mind is just completely stable and steady. This is where the mind needs to learn how to enjoy something, but not experience the conditioned feelings. So that individual who's trained in this way, when they stump their toe, there's no mental anguish whatsoever. And because of that, your physical pain is actually very muted. You don't experience heightened physical pain, because that physical pain that you experience is actually very minimal compared to what the mental anguish puts on top of that. Because if you crave permanent comfort of the body, when you stump your toe, not only do you get the physical pain, you get the mental anguish to go along with it, and that's going to heighten the physical pain. But when you get rid of that mental anguish, that physical pain will just be very muted, right? And then the Buddha just goes on and explaining that this is the difference between all of these two people, these two individuals. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom if you have questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. Okay, so let's go to, by the way, these chapters, I think you guys know, you have my words in here. I help you to be able to understand each aspect of this so that you can understand what the Buddha is teaching you, because he's using the words cause, disappearance, gratification, danger, and escape. And here in other parts of the chapter, I'm helping you to be able to understand how to integrate this and how to benefit from this particular discourse. Okay, this is chapter 45. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, Samantha, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. 4 persons found existing in the world. Monks, these four persons are found existing in the world. What four? The subdued in body but not in mind. The unsubdued in body but subdued in mind. He who is subdued in neither. He who is subdued in both. And how, monks, is a person subdued in body but not in mind? In this case, a certain person makes his bed and lodging in the lonely glades and solitude of a forest, but meanwhile thinks sensual thoughts, malicious thoughts, and harmful thoughts. Thus, monks, a person is subdued in body but not in mind. And how is a person unsubdued in body but subdued in mind? In this case, a certain person does not make his bed and lodging in the lonely glades and solitude of a forest, yet meanwhile he thinks unworldly thoughts, thoughts not malicious, not harmful. Thus a person is unsubdued in body but subdued in mind. And how is a person subdued neither in body nor in mind? In this case, a certain person does not make his bed and lodging in the lonely glades and solitude of a forest, yet meanwhile he thinks sensual, malicious, and harmful thoughts. Thus a person is subdued neither in body nor in mind. And how is a person subdued both in body and in mind? In this case, a certain person makes his bed and lodging in the lonely glades and solitude of a forest, and at the same time thinks unworldly thoughts, thoughts not malicious, not harmful. Thus a person is subdued both in body and in mind. So these four persons are found existing in the world.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So whenever you see the Buddha talking about these kinds of things, it's not that he's saying these are the only four types of people found in the world. He's just saying, hey, these are four types of individuals that you'll see. And he usually leaves the last one for the one that he's recommending for you. He doesn't say that here, but this is what would be wise for an individual. So I'm going to focus on this one, and then it'll help you to understand the other ones as well. So what he's talking about here is a person subdued both in body and mind. And what he's saying by subdued, he's meaning that they're not craving, they're not longing, yearning. And being subdued in body, what he's describing is that an individual is comfortable being alone, that they don't need their body to be around other people. Because if you've ever had like a life partner, for example, or somebody that you slept in the bed with regularly, you know that when they went on a business trip or something like this, you probably find it hard to actually fall asleep or get a good night's sleep because your mind and the body is so attached and holding on to this individual, that the mind is holding on and wanting this individual to be there, and you feel odd or feel strange with this impermanence. So what the Buddha used to teach his students is to go out into the forest and sleep alone, just kind of be with your own thoughts and be comfortable being alone. So this isn't necessarily something that you can do, although you could go camping alone. That is possible. You definitely need to learn how to spend time alone. If you don't feel enjoyment when you're alone with your own thoughts, then why would anybody ever enjoy spending time with you, right? So you need to learn how to enjoy spending time alone. So that could mean going to the movies alone. That could mean going to the mall alone. That could mean going on holiday or vacation alone. This is ways that you can train today rather than going out into the forest. Although you could do that, these are other ways that you can train so that the mind isn't craving and longing and yearning to always be around people. Then when he's talking about the mind and being subdued there, he's talking about certain aspects of the mind that you've eliminated certain cravings. So when he talks about that this individual does not think worldly thoughts, this is like holding on to the world and central desire, wanting things to be a certain way. Having no thoughts of that are malicious, this is like to eliminate ill will, to be practicing the goodwill. This is relating to right intention. And then he talks about not being harmful or practicing harmlessness, where the mind's not thinking harmful thoughts. Right? Because if, let's just say you're in an airport, somebody did something, or maybe they walked past and stepped on your foot by accident. And now maybe you're thinking in a harmful way, like, I should probably go over there and step on their foot or something like this, right? I don't know, just coming up with a certain example. So the Buddha is explaining to you how you can train your mind to not have these cravings, and you can subdue the mind where you're not holding on to the world. You're not having these malicious thoughts or these harmful thoughts, and then also being comfortable to be alone. And there's different ways for you to train your mind to do that today. It doesn't necessarily have to be going out into the forest and being alone, unless that's the way that you would like to do this. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular chapter, because the Buddha is guiding you to be able to cultivate this last one here that he's talking about. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm going to move to this next chapter. This is chapter 46. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, it looks like Keely. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Dedication causes the arising of wholesome states. Monks, I know not for any other single thing of such power to cause the arising of wholesome states, if not yet arisen, or to cause the diminishing of evil and wholesome states, if already arisen, as dedication. Him who is dedicated wholesome states, if not yet arisen, do arise, and evil and wholesome states, if arisen, do diminish. That's all. Thank you.
Sure. So we had a chapter similar to this in a previous chapter here, I think, and it was in this book, where the Buddha basically is talking about how dedication is like a very important quality on the path to enlightenment. Because as you're making your way towards enlightenment, when you look at the totality of the information and the understanding of the teachings that you need to learn, it's quite extensive, right? And you're going to need dedication and determination and diligence to make your way through that. This isn't for the weak-hearted, right? It will help the weak-hearted become stronger, right? But you're going to need to have dedication and determination and diligence as you're making your way on this path. And the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that that's what's going to help you to arise wholesome states. And that's also what's going to help you to eliminate unwholesome states. Because some of these unwholesome things that you experience in day-to-day life, it's not going to be just 1, 2, 3, or 4 times that you're going to then need to be able to eliminate that. Some of these unwholesome things that are in the mind will take you years to eliminate. And you're going to need to be dedicated, right? And some of these wholesome qualities to cultivate, it's going to take you years in some cases to arise some of these wholesome qualities. So if you just kind of give up at the first little sign of a challenge or some little issue, that's not going to help you to get to enlightenment. So there needs to be dedication, determination, and diligence to be able to make your way towards enlightenment by being dedicated to cultivate wholesome qualities of mind and to eliminate unwholesome qualities. So the Buddha is really describing this as what's really going to see you through this entire path to enlightenment. So let me know what questions you guys have here. Looks like Samantha has a question. What's the reference this came from? So this is a book here. It's called The Book of Gradual Sayings, and it's referencing a volume that's in the volumes of the Pali Canon. But this is a book that has kind of collected a bunch of sayings. So because this is in the Pali Canon itself, I could go back and actually find the exact place where it shows up in the Pali Canon. This was actually done by some students, and then I kind of looked them over, but I didn't notice that this one is actually coming from the Pali Canon, but they actually didn't reference the actual thing. So I might actually go back and update this one where it's coming from the Pali Canon. So the reference should be like AN and then like 3.4 or something like that. I don't know where this one is in the Pali Canon, but because it's being referenced here, this is the Pali Canon that it's referencing, this particular book. But it looks like it's referencing a book that kind of summarizes this particular volume of the Pali Canon. But we should be able to trace it back. So I'll actually go back and see exactly which part of the Pali Canon this is coming from, and I'm going to update this particular reference. Okay, let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. All right, I don't see any questions anywhere else. So it looks like we have one more chapter here, and then we're going to be finished with this book, moving on to volume 10 next week. So would somebody like to read this one? Okay, it looks like Pat. Go ahead, sir.
Teachings and discipline will be your teacher. Ananda, it may be that you will think, teacher's instruction has ceased. Now we have no teacher. It should not be seen like this, Ananda. For what I have taught and explained to you as teachings and discipline will, at my passing, be your teacher. Now, monks, I declare to you, all conditioned things are of a nature to decay. Strive on untiringly. These are the Tathagata's last words. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So the Buddha died at the age of 80, and he gave his last teaching here to his students who were with him. There was a small group of individuals. I think, let me see, do I have in here the story? I think it's down here. Let's see. I'll just show you guys this in case you haven't seen it yet. Okay, this is an article that was written by a Thai doctor. He was a monk at the time. I don't think he's a monk any longer. But because he was a doctor prior to becoming a monk, and then he became a monk for a period of time, he understood symptoms and causes and conditions and what it actually could be diagnosed as. So he went through all these different discourses, disparate discourses over the 45 volumes of books, and pieced together what the symptoms that were occurring at the time of the death of the Buddha. And he walks you through that and explains to you what this actual thing could be that actually led to the Buddha actually dying in this last death, or this last experience where he attained final nibbana. So he does a really, really good job. And I've kind of tweaked the word choices a little bit to be able to help you guys understand this. So if you haven't read this yet, this is like a very good read to be able to understand what actually caused the death of the Buddha, because there's people that will tell you that the Buddha died by eating a poisonous sandwich, and this just isn't true. It's very not true. That they think that the Buddha knew that this sandwich was poisonous and somebody was about to eat it, and the Buddha grabbed the sandwich and essentially ate it himself instead of allowing this person to eat it and die. Does that sound like what an enlightened being would do, like a wise person? No, if you knew that sandwich was poisonous, you would just grab it and throw it away, right? Why would you have to eat it? You wouldn't have to eat it. So there's a lot of misunderstanding regarding the death of the Buddha. And that particular article that I put in here is going to help you to be able to see what the Buddha died from, using the Pali Canon to help you see his symptoms of what was occurring around his death. And essentially what he died from is old age, but this individual tracks it down to the exact individual thing with the body that gave out. And the Buddha gave this teaching, his very last teaching, right upon his death, where his student Ananda, this was someone who was very close to him. He's saying, okay, once I die, it might be seen as if my instructions have stopped and that we don't have any teacher. But he's saying, no, you shouldn't see it this way, because what I taught you essentially over the last 45 years, those teachings will be your teacher when I die, because he's explained to you. He's already explained it for 45 years, how to get to enlightenment. So use those teachings. That's going to be your teacher. And then his last words were actually his very first teaching. This is what you need to know in order to get on the path to enlightenment. Any Buddha who's alive, they would understand that their last words are going to be very impactful, that they're going to be remembered, that people are going to be learning them long into the future, right? So he actually used his last words to give his very first teaching of what somebody would need to understand in order to get on to the path to enlightenment. His last words were, "Now, monks, I declare to you, all conditioned things are of a nature to decay. Strive on untiringly." What he's basically saying is the universal truth of impermanence. He's saying, hey, even a Buddha is subject to the universal truth of impermanence, that this body is a conditioned thing. It's going to decay. It is impermanent. But you strive on. Don't get tired. Continue to be dedicated, going forth on the path to enlightenment. So he's helping individuals to understand the universal truth of impermanence through his very last words, because he would have known that these are words that people would have captured and they would have understood, being an actual Buddha. So a Buddha's last words here, it's his very first teaching that an individual needs to know in order to get on the path to enlightenment. And it's his teachings that are going to guide an individual after his death. That you don't need the Buddha to be physically sitting here in order to guide you to enlightenment, because you have his teachings and you have a live teacher that can guide you and be your tour guide. So you use the teachings, his actual words. And as you guys have heard me share before, it's very rare that somebody will learn with the original words of the Buddha. But you see here that he's saying essentially, use my original words as your teacher. That's what's going to be your teacher upon my death. But it's very rare that somebody will actually study his original words. There's about 500 million people who consider themselves Buddhist practitioners in the world. And there's a very, very, very small number of them that actually study with the original words of the Buddha. So you guys have been studying with the original words of the Buddha, so you can see how true his teachings are, and you can see the results and the benefits through having trained your mind with his actual teachings. So let me know if you guys have any questions on this one here. You can put that into Facebook, in YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do then is just end class by thanking all of you guys. Thank you for reading. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn and practice these teachings. As I mentioned, next week we're going to be moving into a new book, Volume 10. This is titled The Buddha's Way. This is going to be the next 10 chapters in that new volume. So we're going to be studying chapters 1 through 10. So if you'd like to actually study those ahead of time, you're more than welcome to. Tomorrow in the group learning program, I'm going to be in Volume 1, Chapter 24. This is titled Misunderstandings of Gotama Buddha's Teachings. There are certain misunderstandings that exist all throughout the world about his teachings because, as I mentioned, the vast majority of the world isn't studying with his original teachings. So what you see in the world oftentimes are people misunderstanding his teachings and practicing exactly the opposite of what he actually taught. So by understanding some of those misunderstandings, you'll be able to be aware of those so that as you're navigating the world and you come in contact with that, you already understand that that is a misunderstanding of his teaching. So there's several of them that I'm going to be sharing with you guys as part of tomorrow's class, 9 a.m. Thai time and 9 p.m. as well. And then on Monday, I'm going to be starting a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course. Those I do every single month, the first week of the month, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So you're always welcome to attend that live in Chiang Mai, or you can attend online through the live stream or even just watch the recordings, because that's a good place to get a really nice, strong foundation. Or maybe you need to revisit some of the foundational teachings, and you're more than welcome to do that. So thank you all for joining, and thank you again for your questions and for reading. Thank you for all your support to help me be able to share these teachings with you. If there's ever a time that you need anything from me, feel free to reach out by asking questions in class. You can post in our Facebook group, you can send a private message, or you can schedule personal guidance. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee-ka. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.